1. Panel, ladies and gentlemen, the reason that motivates our side of the house is accessibility and the chance for fans who are at the heart of this debate an opportunity to be able to see performers that they want and young and aspiring rising performers to have the capacity and chance to be represented. This can best happen when these stages are democratized or decentralized as opposed to them being currently traditionally Western when LiveNation is able to control all of these things. Before I move on to the issues and questions we answer from our side, a couple of responses against closing opposition. Firstly, when they talked about how bribing politicians can be avoided by subpoenas, we think that getting involved in these particular scandals is precisely why it's a bad image for the business and for the brand. That is the point in which liberals on TikTok cancel them and Swifties start foaming at the mouth because they don't want to be involved with these things because they spent all of their money paying for the Eras tour. Which is precisely why, if we break them up, they get a fresh start and we're able to rebrand into whatever we want and abandon the dirty name and reputation that has already been tarnished by the DOJ case and characterization that my partner brought to you. Second, they talked about how there are just too many providers and it's super duper expensive to have to do business with all of these particular things. We rather pay for things like state attorneys and state services. Guys, fuck, this is such a debate land cop-out reason. These state services exist independently from the entertainment industry. They have their own budgets. This debate is how the entertainment industry can be more accessible to the people who want to watch it, and those who want to perform can have the literal and figurative stage to sing and forward their content. I don't see why that's particularly important. Thirdly, they talk about and assert why it's very expensive to build venues. But we think the simple answer here is we can rent venues in other capital cities that LiveNation does not own. We can use certain existing infrastructure. So, even if opening government wants to take this higher burden of like having to build all this shit, we tell you, let's be more strategic. We can think smart. We want to be able to use the existing infrastructure that happens. I don't think LiveNation owns everything in Manila, everything in Tokyo, everything in Phnom Penh. Fourthly, they talked about the sunken cost of all of these particular investments. That's exactly why you have a sunken cost fallacy. Because people in status quo are like, we spent so much on this infrastructure already, might as well not do anything about it. No, the goal is not to abandon the entire entertainment industry and let LiveNation get away with the shit that they're doing. It's to reform it and change it and break them up and free the very people who want to watch these things from the shackles that they already have. Fifth, they talked about how, it's not important because it's a luxury. That's exactly where Jaren's case comes in, and we decentralize the power that they currently have that might actually make it cheaper in the long run for people to actually forward content. But let me take the higher burden. Even if these things don't get cheaper ultimately, at least people still have better representation. And as everyone already agreed, particularly the opening opposition, people are very passionate and are willing to like sell a kidney and all that to watch these shows. So even if these things marginally get more expensive and stay that way, there are still going to be people who are going to watch those shows. Before I move on, go ahead, opening up. That's exactly why, when we break it up, we leave the domestic market and those cities the chance to be more proximate with those particular talent. The reason why it's only like the Taylor Swift and headline brands and shit that get all of this coverage is the point in which of what you said. These smaller artists aren't that profitable and known, and that's exactly what limits the industry. What we want to do is make the pie bigger. A couple of questions we answer coming from closing government. Number one, how does the industry really work? Number two, why are they getting sued in status quo? And number three, how exactly do we give people what they want, which is the whole point of this freaking industry? Firstly, The economic fetters that we get from opening opposition are actually contingent on it actually working. Here are a few, as they say in debate land, structural reasons why that's less likely to work. A. Why would a large conglomerate with economies of scale have any incentive to give up margins? The events industry is largely dictated by a volume game and consumers are extremely price sensitive. That is precisely why it becomes more expensive to have to deal with all of these layers of bureaucracy that actually happen, which are more likely to be passed off to the consumer. Meaning, even if LiveNation has different offices across the world, they still have to get final approval from the head office in terms of approving a particular set list, in terms of approving a particular event. That is the point in which you have a limited capacity for talent to be represented, and they also have the veto power to say no at the point in which they don't think these things are particularly profitable or palatable to people. B. Even if these laws and regulations get passed, it's also contingent on compliance. That is exactly why the nature of a large multinational corporation is to use their spheres of influence in politics to be able to get what they want. And right now, even if they're being sued, nothing is happening. It's largely a gridlock that's happening in the juridical sphere, which is precisely why we tell you that it's better to be able to break them up and decentralize the power as opposed to being at the mercy of corporate America. Lastly is a comparative, given the POI of opening up earlier in the round, like, yo, why can't you just sign with AXS versus so many other providers? It's not like these artists don't have teams and managers, and who would not want more distribution channels to be able to provide your goods and services? Not everyone has a Taylor Swift-esque problem wherein you can negotiate with an entire country like Singapore to monopolize the industry. Ladies and gentlemen, on our side of the house, things actually get cheaper over time, and ultimately, even if these things remain expensive, at least provide a better consumer experience for those particular individuals who want it. Yes, overhead costs might become more expensive, but over time you're able to make it cheaper when you decentralize the power to these particular capital cities. And for all of these reasons, I'm very proud to propose.